Welcome to the Thrive with OMU Podcast, where each week I'll chat with an amazing entrepreneur on their growth journey. They'll be sharing this with us to help and encourage us to take that bold step. Hey people, I'm here again and I have with me Candy. Candy, it's so nice to have you on our podcast today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. So what do you do? Because I know that everybody wants to know who Candy is.
So I do a couple of things. The first is I have a podcast as well. It's called She Coaches Coaches. And I am a coach. I coach new coaches to get started in their business, to get launched and to sign clients. But I also coach high vibe leaders. These are people that are in corporate that realize that they want something more with life, and they're really stuck in that corporate land, and they want more heart, in their life.
So usually I would ask what led you to it, but I'm going to now go a different way. Now, when you say people that are in corporate and they want more, everybody really wants more. Don't you think?
They do, but the people that I work with, they don't want more money and status and power. Like they've tried that and they feel
already
empty.
There. Yeah.
Right? They feel like they feel hollow and they feel like something is missing. And most of the time, the thing that's missing is themselves, their self.
Yeah, I agree with you because I was actually talking to one of my guests some days ago, and we both agreed that there comes a time. I think she actually said that statistics has it that when people start to earn $75,000 per annum and upwards, they tend to their values tend to change in the sense. Maybe not their values changing, but money stops being their driving force. So they're not looking, they might want to make more money, but it's not about money for them anymore. And they're just looking for their life to have some meaning. Or they begin to realize that, okay, I have a house, I have a car, I can go on a holiday if I want to. I have the things that I thought would make me happy, but I'm still not happy.
Exactly. And I think everybody has their own dollar figure. For some people, I've heard the same statistic that at 75,000, that's kind of like the peak happiness number because all your needs are met and you've got a pretty good life. But what happens is they realize that they've got I won't say their priorities, but their balance in their life wrong. Not from a place of it needs to be perfect and everything in its place, but that actual balance of when you're standing on one leg and you're kind of, shifting and moving a little bit, like that is balance. But they feel like they're completely off balance. Like if they stood on one leg in their metaphorical life, they would just fall down, right?
Wow. So how do you work with them? And actually what I want to find out is what's the common problem that you find? And I'm saying this because myself inclusive, we often associate people like that with confidence, boldness, that can-do spirit, not afraid of anything. So it's usually surprising when you see that powerful woman powerful in quotes, occupying some seats that you think is really high up there, very bold, very confident. You really can't associate her with any fear or any doubt or, so what would you say really is it? Having dealt, you're laughing.
Well, you can see my face, right? Yeah. And so that's, I love that you describe it that way, because when I was in corporate, I thought that too. Like I would see somebody and I would think, she's got it all together, right?
Exactly.
And I still have to remind myself that how I feel on the inside is different than how I look on the outside. So most people meet me and they're like, you're always so confident. And I'm like, do you know me? Right?
Hit the nail on the head, because on practically every episode, I always say we never look like what we've been through.
Well put.
So yes, I get that. And like I when I say to people that, oh, I'm very shy, they're like, you shy? How? So yes, I get that. So having worked with those sort of women, what are the common, I mean, I know that each one comes with a totally different challenge and all that. But what are the, like the common ones that you find with those sort of women or men? Personally, I found that in the course of my work, I found that when I work with women like that, surprisingly, I find that they are very hungry for company.
Yes.
And they're very hungry for authentic relationships, because they've found themselves in that position where most people they meet want to be in their good books. They don't have people who are open to them and all that. But that's me and the ones that I've met. I haven't worked with that many, so I'm just trying to find out what are the common,
Yeah, and as you're like this hungry for company is, I see that as well. They're lonely. They have people
yes,
around them, but they're really, truly lonely. Sometimes it's because they're the strong ones in everybody in their life, like in their family and in their social group. They're the ones that people lean on. And at work as well, people turn and look at them and say, what do you think? Right? But that doesn't mean that you have that connection. So a few things that I see, especially with the most, the most senior, highest level, is imposter syndrome is huge. Stress and self-doubt and confidence. They're confident in what they do, but they're not always confident in who they are. And there's a real difference between confidence as an emotion or with a skill set, and then that self-trust that we have, that we can rely on ourselves when the going gets tough, So there's one more thing, and I don't know if you've seen this as well, but they kind of worry that they've lost their femininity, that they've gone so far into that masculine energy. It's not that they don't dress feminine, but it's this divine feminine within them that is missing somehow.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from. Being in that leadership executive position for so long that you've kind of, would I use the word, toughened up in a way that you've lost your feminine side. And talking about having confidence and in themselves, I can imagine that some people, I see that actually, anywhere outside the territory where they work, where they're in control of, they're suddenly,
you just said that, where they're in control of, right? Like, do you see that with other people that you talk to as well?
Yes, I do.
Need for control.
The need for control, and that's where they get their confidence from. So when they're not in control, they kind of lose. And
how
does? Sorry, go on. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so much of that control, what they find out is that it's more that they don't feel in control of their life. And then that sort of translates to their world. So they want to control, they want to control the metrics, they want to control the deliverables, they want to control the project path, they want to control that initiative. But it's that they don't feel that they're not in control in a harsh way, but understanding of themselves, in control of who they are and showing up authentically.
Wow, that it's really a struggle. I'm actually, thinking about it now and just wondering how they cope. You mentioned imposter syndrome. I really want to hear what you have to say about that. How does it play out?
So I think that's one of the things that drives what you were saying, this place of hungry for company. So they think that they're alone. They think that they don't quite measure up. And so imposter syndrome is a little bit different than self-doubt, in my interpretation.
Yeah.
So self-doubt is, I'm not sure if I can. Imposter syndrome is, I got here by a fluke and somebody's going to find out that they made a mistake and they're going
I'm not deserving. I'm not deserving. Yeah.
It's a mistake. It was just because the sun rose in the west today that something happened.
There was no one to fill the gap.
Yeah. Oh, that one for sure. Nobody else. So they gave it to me. I love that. I thought about that. Cool. So, gosh, what was I saying about imposter syndrome? What do I see is that it's rampant. And that imposter syndrome actually contributes to that hungry for company, because they don't feel like they can share who they are, because they think if anybody sees that inner part of them, they're going to realize what a fraud they really are. And so they build up those defenses, those walls around themselves, and then keep themselves lonely as well.
Do you think that also plays out in their being their authentic selves?
Yeah, it does. And I think that is that is like the pivot point for the loneliness. It is the pivot point for that feeling of wanting to control everything. It is the pivot for feeling like you climbed the ladder, but that ladder's on the wrong building. It's kind of the pivot for everything. It always comes back to us, right? To who we are, accepting ourselves and being authentic to ourselves.
Wow. So, I'm really, really interested in going deeper in this conversation. So with women out there, and I think this is timely because more and more women are occupying executive seats these days, and we're more open to taking leadership positions. So I also think that the pressure is a lot more. Obviously, the whole world is online. So I believe I'm not just competing with the woman next door, I'm competing with the whole world, So the pressure is more to be a certain way and all that. How do you deal with them? And also, I find that some of these people are going through it and they really don't know.
And if they really don't know, they might not be ready to do the work, right?
Absolutely.
You need to get to a certain point of miserable to be ready, right?
Yes. I was saying to my son, I said, sometimes you need to create discomfort to move. Because sometimes when you're too comfortable, you don't move.
You don't need to. Things are not painful enough, right? I think, and biologically, we are programmed to be comfortable. So if all of our needs are met and we're quite comfortable, then we don't need to take that next step. And maybe that's, back to the earlier in the conversation where you were talking about that 75,000 threshold. I wonder if that's at play there. That's the place where things are comfortable.
Yeah, probably. And you're not as driven. Yeah. I mean, there's there's no unpaid bill. There's nobody ringing you to remind you of a bill. There's no, there's a car to take you to work. You have enough money to put gas in your car. Your bills are paid. So the holiday is taken care of. That makes sense, actually. That makes sense. And then, you also mentioned that you're a coach's coach.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, that's what I do. I coach. I'm not a coach's coach, I'm a coach. And so I work with people that want to live their best lives, obviously. I love that. And I help them, work with them to overcome self-doubt, imposter syndrome, fear of failure, fear of success. So obviously in the course of work, you get to hear a lot and, deal with a lot. I'm an empath. So I tend to absorb people's emotions. And until I found out that I fell into that category of an empath, and I was able to realize the effect and what it does to me, I was always drained. I just couldn't tell, why, until I was doing the work and found out that I absorb all that energy. So I personally, I always have need for someone to offload and, recalibrate. That said, how do you work with coaches?
So there's two sides to it. There's the business side of it, and that's quite logistical. Do these things. Here are some strategies. Look inward and see what strategies feel like a good match for you. Very, step by step. Let's make this efficient and effective, because no coach wants to be, this is true. Most coaches don't want to be entrepreneurs. Coaches generally, I have found, say, if you give me 20 clients, that is it. I'm happy.
Yeah, just give me the job. I'll do the coaching.
I just want to do the work, right? I just want to do the work. I don't want to do all that other stuff. So there's that side of it. And then, coaches are people, and people need coaching, right? So I have this saying that a doctor goes to a doctor, a therapist goes to a therapist, and coaches need coaching. So there's two sides. We've got the logistical, and then we've got the pure coaching of like, tell me what's going on, right?
Yeah. And how is that going?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I find coaching to be the most rewarding thing I have ever done in my life.
Yeah. I think so too. I didn't think it was going to be this rewarding. And but lately, I think also I've grown personally and professionally. So I've started appreciating it more. And then after I did my course on living your best life and I practiced it, I was able to align my core values with my values at work and the people that are around me. So the more in alignment I am with what I do, the more at peace I am. So now I'm beginning to feel more fulfilled, and that joy that comes from seeing a satisfied face. It's priceless. It's priceless. So I really don't have that much experience in working with coaches. So I'll ask you this: when you're coaching a coach, do you have the challenge of I know what you're doing?
Yes, of course. Of course. They're like, I know you're asking me a powerful question, and now you're listening, and now you're reflecting back to me, and now you're holding space. Of course. And it doesn't matter, because then we just laugh, right? I'm like, yeah, of course, but hello, you know these tools, you know they work, but when you're living inside your body, you can't do it the same way.
Because because I find myself sometimes when I'm coaching informally when it's maybe just a friend and all that, and I'm saying certain things to her, I actually find myself saying, yes, I know I don't do it, but
it's part of the journey. We're just a little bit farther down the path than most of our clients, right?
yeah, but so, I mean, how do you deal with coaching coaches?
I ask them what they need today. You know, what's going on? What's amazing? What are they celebrating? I show up as myself, and sometimes we just talk. You know, there's some coaching conversations where they're very that, you know, long pause, a single question, and then let it sit. But lots of times it's just this shared conversation, you know, ask the question, have some reflection. Sometimes it's a bit more organic than that kind of pure coaching session that you might normally see. Does that answer your question? I'm not quite sure. Let me.
Yeah, it does.
What do you really want to know? That's the thing, right?
What do you really want to know?
Yeah.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I want to know, because the question was, you asked me a question and I answered what I thought was the question, but I don't know if that's what you really want to know.
But no, you did answer the question. I was trying to create the scenario in my head, like if I was the coach you were coaching. I think I'll make a very difficult client.
Oh, I had when I was a coach, it's just starting out. My very, very first coach, we finished our engagement, and it was the whole coaching engagement was a struggle. I was scared. I was like, I had come off of some serious burnout, and where I live in Canada, it is very common to be the only Black person in the room. It is also common to be the only woman in the room. So to be the only Black and the only woman at the same time in a room full of 6 foot tall white men can be quite an adventure. So I was coming off of a really difficult time. And at the end of our coaching engagement, she said to me, "You are actually the most defensive and difficult client I have ever experienced."
Oh my goodness. That can be your coach.
Yeah. And so, like, part of it's true, but part of it also showed me that she wasn't the right coach for me.
Yes.
Because she couldn't see that the reason I was defensive is because I was hurting so badly.
Yes, because you should have seen that and asked more questions. Yeah.
But it's funny, right? So we show up. Sometimes we're difficult clients, like as a coach being a client, sometimes we're difficult. But that is the sign that what we need is more space, more understanding, more compassion, a gentler hand, to be firm for the coach to be firm when it's appropriate, and then to watch the music. Is the music rising or falling here?
Especially when she says you're defensive. Anyone who's been defensive certainly is a sign of something.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was a great learning experience for me. And I also learned that I would never ever say that to a client.
Absolutely. So, do you work with your clients one-on-one, or do you do like a group coaching? And do you do it online or in person?
Always online, and mostly one-on-one. There is something about this, like you and I having this conversation here. This is my thing. I love this, right? But I do have a group that is starting up. I'm going to try out a small group. I've done some group work before, and it has an added dimension that's really interesting to me, that, how the different participants come together, how they can support and see each other. And then how do I interact with the group to support them as a whole? So I am starting a group. I do occasionally teach classes as well. But one of my favorite things to do is every Monday morning, I offer a free 1 hour coaching and conversation. So people can come, they can hang out. We do some journaling. I ask some questions. I sometimes teach a little something.
Every Monday morning, you meet on Facebook or on Zoom?
On Zoom. And, and I'm pretty upfront that sometimes people are kind of wondering if they'd like to work with me. Well, come to one of those and see what it's really like. Maybe I'm your person, maybe I'm not. But in the meantime, I can be adding value and helping people, and especially the people that maybe are not quite ready for coaching yet.
Yeah, that's nice. That's amazing. And then you have people just come in and go out. They can come this week and not come next week.
Exactly. The other thing that's so much fun with it is that some of my current clients who need just a little bit of a boost or a touch point, they'll show up, and my past clients. So it's a great way to keep in touch with, the community that I have built. And it's just so rewarding. I love it.
Awesome. So what are we expecting from you soon? And how does anyone reach you?
So the easiest way to reach me is to listen to my podcast. They're listening to your podcast. They can just go and listen to mine as well. Podcasts are great. And it's called She Coaches Coaches. And that is the one place where I show up every week without fail. So that would be the one place that I would recommend. Sometimes you just need to hear that one different perspective, that one different thought.
Even if it's something you think you've heard before.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So before we go, I'm sure that a lot of our listeners have been listening. What tip would you give? Because I imagine that, and I asked the question before, if the women know they're going through what they're going through, and you answered. And I know for a fact that a lot of times they don't know they're going through this, and they're just wondering why I'm not happy or why I'm constantly tired, and you're blaming it on work, obviously, or on any other thing, and it really isn't it. I also know that there are a lot of people at this point who are either wanting to transition, or they've already transitioned and it's usually very rough, or they're looking to do other things. Everyone wants to have multiple streams of income. Everyone is beginning to realize that where they're working might not necessarily be their passion, and different things like that. What are the few tips you would give people in that to even start searching and to even, start the journey before they get in touch with you or any other coach?
Right. So I really appreciate that you said few tips, because my mind is just going, right? The first thing is that it's always the most satisfying journey and the most satisfying result, whether it's a work transition, whether you're moving up within a company or starting your own company or retiring or whatever. The first is always that this is an inner journey. And so many people that are having a difficult time in their world, something is going on in their world, in their relationships, in their work, whatever, is that it's going to help you to connect with who you are. And people think that, and they think, oh, I should get to know myself. I should, do that. But they kind of are a little bit scared. And so thinking that maybe that what's inside there is not something amazing and wonderful, thinking that maybe there's something that's not very nice inside them. And so to remember that their truest, highest, most divine self wants them as much as they are looking for it. So that first step on your journey to connecting with yourself, that divine wants you, and you only have to take a tiny step. It's just there to embrace you. So I always suggest start in nature, watch a sunset, watch a sunrise, go for a walk, move your body, a little bit of quiet time. If you have an exceedingly busy life and quiet time sounds like the most terrifying thing, 1 minute. 1 minute isn't enough. Look at plants, look at trees, look at flowers, and allow yourself just to decompress just a smidgen. That's your first step.
Amazing. 1 minute really is enough. And it's a good thing that you mentioned that, because there's just so much going on in the world. And there's so many distractions. So even though 1 minute is just 60 seconds, you'll be shocked that we don't even have that 1 minute.
Exactly.
So I think we need to be more intentional about that.
Very much. And so for me, if I would be in your space, I'm looking at this wonderful, I don't know if you call it a pencil plant. I call it a pencil plant. And then you've got the snake skin plants too.
Yeah.
Just to look at those.
I've always wondered the name, and now you mentioned it. Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah.
But just to really look at the plant, just that, just to gaze at it for a minute and look at the different greens and look at how the stalk turns and how there's just a feeling around that. Yeah. That is enough to just sort of open that little doorway. You do that every day, a little bit. You've started on the journey and you're doing great.
Wow. This has been very enlightening.
I've so enjoyed it. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Candy. So, hey guys, you need to go and listen to Candy's podcast for more and more tips and information. She coaches coaches. I'm certainly going to look out for that. Okay, guys. Thank you, Candy.
Thank you so much.
I'm out. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Thrive with OMU Podcast. This is your host, OMU Obilo.